Exercise 17-13 Horizontal Analysis. Data for Elderberry Designs, Inc. follow. So we can view our data here in a second. And the requirements are prepare a horizontal analysis of the comparative income statement for Elderberry Designs, Inc. Round percentage changes to one decimal place. And then the second requirement is why did 2025 net income increase by a higher percentage than net sales revenue? So it also reminds us in the first requirement here that we round the percentage to one decimal place and use a minus sign or parentheses to indicate a decrease. So when we pop in our data table here, you'll notice that actually all of this is already in this table. So since this is redundant at this point, we can go ahead and close out of it for space sake. So here we have that comparative income statement. Here's the older year and the new year. So we're going to analyze each row to see if there's an increase or decrease and what the percentage was. So our formula for percentage change is the new data, which is 2025, minus the old data, which is 2024, divided by the old data, which is 2024 again. But first we need to figure out the increase amount or the decrease amount, which means take new minus old. So for net sales revenue, that is the 431,000 minus the 372,350. So let me get our calculator open for that. So that is, we can tell it's increasing just by looking at it, but the amount it increased by, let's have a peek. That is 58,650. So we can go ahead and input that there. And now to check the percentage increase here, that's next. It's the new minus old, which is this number that we just calculated, divided by the old number. So divided by this number of 372,350 back in 2024. So let's go ahead and take that and divide it by the old year. And so the percentage change is 15.8 since we are rounding up to the nearest digit here for the percentage. So then it appears our net sales revenue has increased by almost 16%, so that is good. Next, for our cost of goods sold, we're going to do the same formula. So we're going to take the new 200,000 cost of goods sold minus 187,550, and that is going to give us 12,450 positive. So that's an increase in cost of goods sold. And then let's see what that percentage changes by dividing that same number we just got in the increase amount by the old amount. So that is actually going to be 187,550. So that is a 6.6% increase for cost of goods sold from the previous year. Next up, we have selling and administrative expenses. So that looks like it increased from about 91,000 to 99,000. So let's get that exact increase amount by taking the new year of 2025's amount and subtracting the previous year. So that's that 91,050. So that is an increase of 79,000. So that is an increase of 7,950. So we can put that in. And then in order to get the percentage increase here, we're going to go ahead and divide it by the old year of 91,050. And that is going to give us a percentage change of 8.7%. And we'll go ahead and input that here. And again, we're rounding just to the first decimal place after converting this to a percentage. Okay, so now when we move on to other expenses, it appears the expenses have also increased. So let's go ahead and clear this out and take the new 8350 minus 600 or 6,850. And that change is 1,500. So that is an increase of 1,500. And then again, to get the percentage change, we divide by the old year amount here of 6,850. So let's go ahead and check what that is. So that is a 21.9% increase here. And again, we were rounding. Okay. So then when we go to total expenses, it looks like that's an overall increase as well. So let's take the new year of 2025's amount here, 307,350, and then we'll subtract out the 20, and then we'll subtract out 285,450. And that is going to give us an amount of 21,900. So I'll go ahead and enter that in. And then again, to get that percentage change, we are going to divide by the old year's amount, which is the 285,450. So let's go ahead and see what that changes. So that overall change is 7.7% because again, we're rounding to that first decimal place after this is converted to a percentage. So that would be just multiplying this number by 100. So let's keep going. We've got our net income here, so increase overall as well. Let's see what that amount is. So the New Year's amount of 123,650, subtract 86,900, and that is going to give us a total amount of 36,750. Go ahead and enter that in. And then again, to get that percentage, we'll divide by the old year's amount. And so that ends up being 42.3% because we are rounding again to the first decimal place after this is a percentage. Okay, let's close out of this here and check our answer so far. Good job. Okay, so now we're on to requirement 2. Why did 2025 net income increase by a higher percentage than net sales revenue? So check this out. Our sales revenue increased by about 16%, while our net income increased by about 42%. So how could that be? Well, the reason is because our revenues increased by much more than our expenses. So again, an increase in revenue by about 16%, while total expenses are about 8%. So again, revenues increased at a higher rate than total expenses. So it looks like this company is in good shape. And then the answer here, net income increased by a higher percentage than total net sales revenue during 2025 because revenue increased at a higher rate than expenses. So that is, and then we'll go ahead and check our answer. Excellent.